It was massive. The temple in Jerusalem was a massive building. It was the third iteration. Solomon's temple, gone. Zerubbabel's temple, gone. But now in its place is this massive edifice built by Herod, who was actually a brilliant architect. The smallest stones in this rendition of the temple were 2 to 3 tons in weight. Many weighed 50 tons. The largest existing stone, which is still part of the Wailing Wall, is 12 meters in length and 3 meters high and weighs hundreds of tons. The stones were so immense that neither mortar nor any other binding material was needed. Their stability was assured by the great weight of the stones. The walls of the temple towered over Jerusalem, over 400 feet in one area, and inside the walls was 45 acres of bedrock mountain shaved flat. And during Jesus' time, over 250,000 people could fit comfortably within this structure. No sports structure in America today comes close. The temple in Jerusalem was massive. So imagine what it must have been like when Jesus, who is leaving the temple for the last time because he will be dead by the end of the week, imagine what it must have been like for Jesus' peeps to hear him say, "Not one stone will be left upon another, all will be thrown down." This temple, this massive edifice, will be taken down and destroyed. It must have been so stunning and so hard to grasp and understand that something so massive, strong, and secure could be taken down. So hard to hear and imagine. So much so that later that night, under cover of darkness on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew come to Jesus privately as they are struggling with their thoughts and feelings to try to figure this out. And why was that important? Because this massive building, this temple, was the structure that provided our ancient Judaic brothers and sisters with a secure, strong, and critical place for their religious and spiritual comfort and trust that Yahweh was their God and they were Yahweh's people. This massive building was their outward visible sign and location of everything inward and essential for their spiritual grace. This very outside area of the temple, by the way, so if you're looking at the temple, the very outside area was where Gentiles, people like you and me, were allowed to be. Next in was the court of the women, or what was called the outer court, where Judaic women were welcomed and allowed, but could go no further. Some things seem hard to change. Next in was the Hall of the Israelites, which is where Judaic men were welcomed, then the Hall of Priests, and the area where sacrifices to God took place. And finally, was the Holy of Holies, where God resided, and where the priests entered only once a year on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This massive building was the symbol of their Judaic beliefs and practices, but most importantly, where God resided, where their God resided. And Jesus is telling them it will be taken down and destroyed. Imagine having that taken away. Sort of like old St. Paul's. I mean, look at this amazing building, right? It's stunning and big. And it's where everyone is welcomed, everywhere in the building, where we get to know each other and revel in friendships and in the care we offer each other, where we learn and grow together, and where we worship our God and break bread together. Where in this huge structure we can come, be with each other, but also be with God and know that God is with us. So imagine if this was ever taken down and destroyed. Imagine what that would feel like. Probably not much different than our ancient Judaic brothers and sisters. Would the loss of the temple mean the loss of God? Especially this week when they are about to lose Jesus? What would happen to us if we lost this building, the physical symbol of our stability and security? I think we are in the midst of a very disruptive time right now, and I find it unsettling and scary. Ukraine, the Middle East, the Sudan of Africa, to name a few, and in this country, regardless of your opinion or response to the election, this is a disruptive time in our country right now, unsure about our future and what will happen. It is an unnerving and complicated time, I think. And beyond wars and elections, how do we survive hurricanes that regularly destroy homes and communities, competing vituperative political voices, violence in our language and actions, so that old St. Paul's hires a guard to be outside our front door, for which, BTW, I'm actually pretty grateful. And, oh my God, OMG, when will we ever treat all people as beloved children of God and end racism and sexism and genderism and any other kind of ism that separates and divides us? When? In today's complicated world and these unsettling times, how will we survive if our structures, the things we rely on, and not just the physical ones, are taken down? Well, Hannah knew, and because of that, we can know too. Hannah is barren, and in a patriarchal world and culture, female identity and worth is tied to childbearing. So imagine the stigma for a woman who could not conceive. Hannah is married and chooses and wants to bear a child, but she cannot. Her husband's other wife, who can bear kids, taunts Hannah all the time, reminding her regularly that God has closed her womb. And despite the fact that her amazing husband loves her anyway, Hannah is inconsolable. She feels humiliated and useless. Imagine her distress. If I were Hannah, I'd be in a corner somewhere sucking my thumb. Sort of like I feel occasionally these days. But that's not what Hannah did. Despite everything, despite being ridiculed, despite feeling humiliated and useless, despite everything, Hannah doesn't turn away, but turns to the massive, the only massive that finally matters. She turns to God. And in the sanctuary at Shiloh, she turns to God and offers an extraordinary prayer, a prayer that is real and honest. Hannah comes to God with all her vulnerability, anguish, and despair, and pours out her soul because she trusts God. And as such, strength springs from her intense awareness of God's unique power and sovereignty. And it is her humility and honesty that get her beyond being regarded as worthless by others and herself. She is empowered not by might or political influence, but by her intimate connection to God, because she knows, believes, trusts that God will hear her, love her, and never be taken down, because she knows what massive really means. Oh my God, I want what she had, don't you? Yeah? Yes? Thank you. And I bet that's what Jesus wanted his peeps to have, and us too. To know that when the world and our place in it, when the structures of the world, both physical and otherwise, are taken down, that Hannah and Jesus call us to look beyond physical appearances and instead to trust God, who is not bound by our structures, physical or otherwise, to trust our massive God so we can be slightly massive ourselves in a world that needs our prayers. All of which might, just might, help me get my thumb out of my mouth, and maybe you as well. Amen.